All right, well, that was a disaster. Whatever. Who cares? Anyway, hi. Um, I promise I'm not going to stick around too long with this one. Okay. I just wanted to, because I got a lot to do. But I needed to, jump on and just talk about some stuff because I think one of the biggest problems that we've got, well, one of the ones that I'm seeing anyway, is that this idea of sort of AI, right, has become too big, too existential, too dramatic. And I think that a lot of people who have really kind of felt like there's a fire under their feet or for whatever reason feel like they need to get active and talk about these things. I want to talk a little bit about the traps that you can fall into when you care about an issue. So when you want to get active, okay. And also just how to approach these things because it's easy to get off track and easy to think that you are doing activism when really you're not really doing anything. And you actually do have more power than you realize, especially somewhere like here, where in Australia, where you do have a lot of recourse, like regardless of what people say, because, a lot of people consume American media and think that US systems are what apply here, right? There's nothing funnier than watching someone fight about their right to free speech, those sorts of things, right? But there actually are things that can be done. And I think that this is something that I just find like, I think now that Twitter has gotten stupider and it is really just copy and paste bullshit, repeated generic jokes, and just the dumbest, the stupidest ideas that you could ever think of. Like, no one does anything. It's just a whinge fest all the time. But also one of the traps, even when you're doing like content, right? Don't fall into this content trap. And that's what I want to talk about. If you have to decide whether you are actually doing stuff or whether you're just producing content. Now, there's nothing wrong with doing awareness, or there's nothing wrong with doing content that educates people, right? That is one of the big barriers for AI, is that people don't know what they're dealing with. But this is one of the traps of activism in particular, especially in terms of getting engaged with any particular issue, is making it too big, making it too complex, not being clear on what you're actually fighting. Like, there's no point talking about global shit, okay? Unless you're an international lawyer and you have a desk at a room in the UN, there's very little point, okay? Now, obviously educating yourself about how these things interact, how difficult it is to coordinate laws internationally, sure. But one activist, okay, can't do shit at the global level. Can make an impact on many things, right? But let's not get into this whole influencer brain trap. And I'll talk about that in a minute, because I'm seeing it happen a lot. And, I've fallen into it in the past. And you just need to remember and stay focused and remember what you're actually, if you actually give a shit, you actually need to do stuff. Okay. So first off, you need to actually do something. Don't call yourself an activist when you are a blogger. Okay. If you're just writing a blog and you're just writing news articles, you're a writer. You're not an activist. Okay. First off. Okay. You can be both. If you're a writer who does stuff, then you can call yourself an activist. But an activist does stuff. Okay. Now I'm going to tell you what activists do. So activists is in the name. They act. Okay, they don't sit around pontificating on quibbles about questions of law with idiots on Twitter. That is not activism. Okay, that's spinning your wheels. It's wasting time, and it often undermines the cause. Okay, now, because while you're sitting around wasting your days on Twitter and Reddit and all those sorts of places, okay, now again, these things. Education has a role, but don't fall into the trap of rationalizing that you are educating people. It's like, no, if you're only talking to the same people all the time and going rah-rah to the same people over and over and over again, you create content for an audience. You're not persuading anyone. You're not changing hearts and minds. You're not working on anything. You're not doing anything, okay? You're just making content for people who are already on board on your side. Okay, now I've seen a lot of this is now because it's I did allude to this, I think, a couple of streams ago, where, I'm seeing this happens with everything, where a bunch of artists particularly have seen a little niche in slagging off tech bros, okay? Slagging off idiots. And yeah, they're idiots. There's lots of idiots online. So, okay, there's stuff that you can actually do in good faith that actually accomplishes something and achieves what you want to achieve, which is to, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But I want to just make it very clear that tweeting isn't activism. It's not activism. Okay, it's just not. You're not doing anything. Okay, on the off chance that you may find yourself going viral with a tweet. Most of the people that will publish anything that you put on Twitter already agree with you. They're preaching to the converted and they're producing content. You do not meaningfully make any kind of change spurging out on Twitter, dunking on tech bros and dunking on preaching to the converted and making like shit posts about AI. Like, that doesn't achieve anything, especially because most of the things that change are done without you in the room. Okay, most of the stuff that actually, I'm just going to turn the chats off because they're distracting and I've got a lot to get through. Just one sec. I'll look at them later. So you've got the a lot of the stuff that's going on. You just sit around talking about this existential threat called AI, which is like, okay, so which part of AI? You know what all this stuff, all of these committees, all of these laws, all of these regulations, all of these things, they're occurring whether you like, whether you post on Twitter or not, and it's happening without your input, without anything you've done, without anything you've contributed. Okay, so that's one reality. You're not an activist if you're on Twitter. Okay, just stop deluding yourself. That's called internet addiction. Preaching to the converted. You're not changing any hearts and minds. Okay, done. Dunking on tech bros accomplishes absolutely fucking nothing. Okay, now that is not activism. Even to the point where if you're writing educational content, sure. Like I changed my mind on some aspects of AI. Again, I'm using AI broadly. I'll break it down because you need to be specific about what you're actually talking about. Not just talk about, you look like a fucking QAnon. You look like they are coming after us. It's like, okay, who's they? What are they doing? What mechanism are they doing it? Where are they doing it? What evidence have you got that they're doing that? Okay, well, you can go and submit a thing over here to stop that from happening. Did you know that? No. Stop making stupid claims that are just too broad to actually be meaningful. So there's that. But also, you sound like fucking QAnon. You sound like these idiots who think that the sky is falling. But if there's anything we've learned from the last couple of weeks is that government runs with or without the big shit. Like the spectacle and theatre and performative bullshit that goes on at the top, okay? That it doesn't have, it's like, especially here where we've got a very administrative government, right? We're very heavy on administrative law, right? The United States isn't much different. It's just that everyone screeches and is constantly too busy screeching about the president to actually learn how their own government works, and that they can actually affect as much more change than they realize simply by being specific, okay, and actually acting, okay? Activist, act, okay? Otherwise, you're a content creator. Now, but that is the trap that people fall into, okay? And, it's just get your head straight there. But also, when you're actually talking about something as big as AI, what are you talking about? Are you talking about large language models? Are you talking about image generation? Okay. Are you talking about automated decision making? There's been more progress on things like automated decision making and algorithms and those sorts of things than there have been with LLMs, right? Now, ChatGPT is an LLM. And, broadly, okay, it's obviously in image generation and there's all subcategories of that, right? But that's an LLM. Did you know that the government here has already done a bunch of assessments based on AI, okay? And they've broken it down into various categories, and they're focused on, the most high-risk aspects of AI, which they have identified as things like automated decision making, facial recognition technology and training facial recognition, or anything that involves privacy or invasions of privacy, manipulative aspects of AI. So they have actually looked at those things. The EU has done more on that. But again, what are you talking about here? Are you talking about AI in healthcare? Are you talking about AI in cars? Are you talking about it in vehicles? What are you talking about when you talk about AI? Be specific. Or are you just are you just shit posting for the lols because you got nothing better to do with your day than sit around shit posting about fucking things you don't understand? So be specific. What do you mean? Okay. Are you talking about privacy? Are you talking about your rights as a consumer? Are you talking about it? What are you talking about? Be specific. So again, are you talking about bias? Are you talking about the human rights aspect of this? That getting clear on those sorts of things. What's your objection? What is your specific objection? One big one is environmental harms. Okay. What about what specifically are you worried about with AI? Write it down. What specifically worries you? Is it just because your particular, like a lot of the artists, they only give a shit because they're fucking, it affects their bottom line. They don't care about the broader policy problem. They just sit around. I've seen this before. They did this with the internet. They've always been moaning and then waiting for someone else to take care of their shit. That's what artists do. They sit around moaning and waiting for someone else to fix the problem. That's what they do. I've worked with artists for many, many years. They're lazy fucks, okay? And that's just part of it. But at the same time, it's like, well, you can't just sit around. Even if you're in the creative industries, you have some agency. You can talk to your clients and take it upon yourself to educate them. Like, one thing when I was, obviously I ran an agency for many, many years. Like, I've never been threatened by any of these developments, okay? Because I could educate the client, which was I would show them, I'd take them through, and I would go, okay, well, there was this thing where they wanted to use, say, stock images or anything like that. And then I'd say, okay, well, why don't you do a reverse image search for that particular image that you want to use? And then they would, and I'd go, well, how do you differentiate when every one of your competitors is using the same photograph? It's naff. Why would you do that? The job is to differentiate. What's the point in doing that? And then I would convince them and persuade them that bespoke and getting a photographer in was, they'd have a bank of photos that were theirs that they could use. Again, it's not all on evil corporations. Only if you're only worried about a lot of this stuff because you can't be asked. Educating your clients, and again, it's not just like, fucking gaslighting people on capitalism. So yeah, you know what? Anyone can create an ideology or attach themselves to an ideology to justify their own behavior, okay? There are substantive criticisms of the role corporations play, the role capitalism plays, obviously, okay? But at the same time, you need to take some personal responsibility. That doesn't exist just because the economic system changes. You still have agency as an artist, and you can take it upon yourself to make sure that you work harder and fucking educate your clients about why using AI is a bad idea. And if you can't do that, if you cannot educate them about why it's a bad idea, then, maybe you need to upskill and learn and understand that, you need to get in the business of sales. If you've been a freelancer for any length of time, you understand that you need to sell. You can't just passively sit back and expect, like, I've had to hustle for every fucking client I've ever had. I've had to work very hard for every sale I've ever had. So maybe I haven't had it handed to me. Every lead I have has been hard fought. Every lead has, I've had to write proposals, lengthy proposals. I've had to pitch for my whole career. But people have to pitch. You have to actually convince people that there's value in what you're doing. Now, again, that can be taken to an extreme, which is to use that as a bludgeon, okay, to prevent people from, fighting substantive issues that they've got, like as in the fact that it's not a level playing field, and that we all know that. I've said this before about the industry, which is that clients are just also very lazy. They want everything done for them. And it is a hard sell these days because they don't see the value between, or the difference between, your average fiver. Like the other thing that we've competed with is over the years is with Fiverr, using offshore Philippines based people for various design or SEO or anything like that, right? And I would say, well, off you go. And then they would realize that it costs them more to manage. There's more risk, and that the end result is bad. So, like, when you're trying to convince people, it's not really that hard. If the technology is shithouse, it's not hard to sell. Like you're seeing, like the people, there's a number of CEOs and stuff that are actually talking about this stuff. If you actually take creativity seriously, it's shit. But what's funny, and this is the trap, this is the activist trap, and this is what fascists do, and this is the problem with idiots and ideology in general, right? Which is that your enemy is either all-powerful or weak. And I see that you've got to be consistent, which is that it's neither. It's not all powerful. These LLMs are shit. They're good for some things, handy for others. They have in certain use cases, it's really useful. And in others, it's not. And people, the problem with the technology is the way that it's being applied, and there's no clarity around what the use cases are. And there's a whole gold rush to try and implement it at every level of the business when they shouldn't be, because it's not the appropriate use. It's not this big, powerful existential threat. In one second, it's like this biggest existential threat ever. But also, it's so shit. You can't have it both ways, okay? The answer to that is it is not really a threat. The real threat is poor implementation, as it has always been. It has been that way with tech since the beginning of time, and everyone adapts. Now, is there, the only reason, again, as someone who's got a unique perspective on this, because I've always hustled and I've always managed to make it work, regardless of the market around me. We've had to compete with offshore juniors, crooks with this, crooks who spend more on salesmen than they do on actual agency resources, all these sorts of things. I've had to compete, and we've survived. So it's a matter of perspective, okay? And I'm not even that great a salesperson, but you just be honest, and people, there's plenty of work for everybody, is my point, generally. And most people, it's like, well, they'll go try AI and then they'll get in over their head and they'll realize that it's shit. And it's like, okay, well, double your rates when they come back. I've been through this enough times to know that that's what's going to happen. But also you've got these other problems, right? So you've got copyright, you've got privacy is the biggest one, safety, all these sorts of things, right? Obviously, I'm concerned about AI scraping because, I write and I create for the internet. So it's like, okay, well, it's a concern, but it's not. You got to be proportionate about these things, but also understand that the regulations are occurring. You sitting there dunking on shit and going, oh, can't someone do something? You sound like an idiot. Do something else. You're wasting your time, okay? And you're sitting around waiting for someone else to fix the problem. And, when you have the ability to do so. And I'm talking to specific people in the anti-AI sort of space who've carved themselves some nice little clout, but they don't actually do anything beyond that. And they've built these little tribes dunking on AI. And it's like, okay, well, is that who you want to be? All right, well, again, it's the same people. It's usually like the same crew who dunk on everything. They're creatives who haven't quite made it. They're making a living. They want to be handed the work by a corporation. So they work in media. They're like, illustrators or artists who have basically just sat there and been handed jobs their whole life. And now they're moaning because they're being handed less jobs. It's like, and again, I understand that. But at the same time, upskill. I have to upskill. My whole industry shifted. Did I fucking sit around and no, I quit and decided to upskill and learn about it. Okay. I don't sit around guts aching about it. Obviously I want the industry to change and there's things that you can do, but a lot of it is behind the scenes, and it definitely doesn't involve building clout on Twitter. So anyway, but there's lots of things that you can do, especially I'll use my state in Australia as an example. Now, I need to qualify for anyone who's watching from overseas that Australia is, we're a lot more, we're very different from both Europe, UK and United States in that we're a very heavily administrative state, but we also, we do things a bit differently here. We have a very strong, sophisticated, complex system of review. Okay, so we have a lot of ombudsmen, we have lots of judicial reviews, we have lots of internal review. There's so many different processes, okay? And the other thing that we've got is that every department is very, very strictly ruled to only be able to operate under the act that they've been appointed under. They have no other powers. It's very, very siloed, but that can be a good thing too. But it can make it difficult to navigate. So you've got the state government. I'm in Western Australia, but this applies mostly across other states. It varies. Okay, obviously, state to state, it varies. Okay, we're a federation like the United States as well. But then you've got federal law. Now, we've got there's so many, even just for Australia, we've got I think so many different mechanisms that you could do right now today. Okay, you sit down, you do an exercise, and you say, okay, what do I want to fight? All right, so. Okay, I want to fight image generators and copyright. Okay, well, did you know that there is currently a committee for that that's open for public consultation? Okay, it's the copyright and AI. Hang on, I have to write it down. The copyright and AI reference group is currently running. You can look it up. You can contact them, and you can write a submission about how it affects you. You can do that today. You can write to your local member because it's actually, coming from Parliament. It's a committee. And you can write to your local member and request that they take that on board. They have to respond. You can write to the minister and say, hey, this is going on. There's things that you can do. But you need to be clear. What is my complaint? What are the specifics of my complaint? Okay. What are the specifics of that? All right, what industry am I in? Okay, I'm a doctor and I'm concerned about automated decisions in healthcare. Okay, well, the health department has a policy on that, as does the government. The WA government has a thing. It's called hang on, let me look it up. So many fucking different, they all change. Hang on. But they all change. But anyway, so the WA government has a whole policy on how to use AI and some best practices around that, okay, making sure that every government department complies with it. So you can actually make sure that the health department knows if you see a breach with automated decisions that you think affects patient care, guess what? There's a policy for that. You can say something. With my university, I did that just now with invigilated exams with proctoring, right? They're using proctoring software, and I got a response, and I made them answer me on how much work they had done on privacy with the software, whether it was subjected to human review, how they dealt with false positives, and why they were implementing it. And it turns out that it was actually the legal board that actually requires it for the university to keep their accreditation. I didn't know that. So there you go. We have a conversation, and they go, okay, well, we've noted your feedback. And I go, thank you. I've noted your answer. Okay, well, that makes sense. That's a reasonable policy. Okay, then, as long as we continue that dialogue, we're doing okay. All right. And these fucking idiots online and bots, it's so pointless. It is absolutely fucking pointless. All of it. It is a waste of time. It is a waste of energy. It is a waste of life seconds. And you're not convincing or persuading anybody. So go away. And that's the thing. It's just do something else. So if you've got, I've again, coming more to the conclusion that online stuff is a waste of time, especially Twitter, and especially anything to do with that is user generated, outside of obviously making content, but comments, all that shit. It's a waste of time. Do something else. Do something. Okay. But anyway, so it's but if you just sit down and break it down and go, okay, well, what do I mean when I say AI? Do you mean ChatGPT? Which LLM do you mean? Do you mean ChatGPT? Do you mean Claude? What specific? They have got a reporting, they've got an appeals and reporting and those mechanisms. Can you issue a complaint to them? Can you do that? You won't. Okay. Can you Australia, we've got legal precedent around things especially I talked about that with automated decision making, right? With robo-debt. Robo-debt was one of the most high profile automated decision making controversies that we've had, where that has since been implemented into government policy. There's been a whole bunch of recommendations And the government's gone, yes, we agree, and they're implementing those things. Did you know that the Privacy Act is currently under review? You can submit to that. Did you know that the Online Safety Act is currently under review? You can submit to that. Did you know that you can actually just go through a standard consumer complaint anytime with the Consumer Protection Agency that is local to you and say, no, they're breaching my rights? So I'll use another example, right? This is, and again, this is just a live stream, so it's obviously, I'm not going to give a comprehensive list of this stuff. But I'm saying, like, it's not activism online. And it's just like, okay, so what industry am I in? What's the problem? Okay, so let's say I'm at a university and I don't like their AI policy. Okay, well, those AI policies are written by humans. I have friends who work at universities and who've been writing these policies, and I've alerted them to a couple of problems with what they've been doing and their approach. And they don't have access to enough information. So they're making reactive policies, and they're actually constantly under review. You can get anything reviewed anytime if you just speak up and actually know what you're talking about and are specific about your complaint. I think that that's the problem, is that people are not a big part of it is that people don't know that they can do stuff, right? But the other thing is that most people just want to have a whinge, and they don't want to be specific about it. So if you're a patient, for example, let's say you're a patient at a hospital and they use some sort of automated decision making. You have a patient's rights advocate at a hospital that you can talk to. Okay, now again, how efficient that is another question. It's more efficient here than it is somewhere else. Like, again, the United States is different, as always, the exception that proves the rule in most cases. And the EU has different rules, and they're a lot harder on AI than even we are. But you have to you have rights. You have. One of these things that I see people moaning about is that they have no rights and that the government's just doing. It's like, well, have you looked at everything that's got like a complaints number or a form? Have you filled out a complaint ever in your whole life? Have you ever looked something up that says, oh, here's what you can do? Because, for example, let's use rentals as an example, right? Not housing rentals in the rental market as it is right now. You can complain about a real estate agent and they get fines. So if they are mishandling your data, okay, I've had a problem with the mishandling of data with our property manager. Hopefully they deal with complaint at the complaints level, but if they don't, I have the right to go and report them to the appropriate authority, and they will get fines that affects their license and their ability to do business. Now, they don't want to do that, okay? It's not just about going to the tribunal. Again, you can actually, if you can be asked, looking something up, you can make a difference with like the little things, so long as you're specific and you do the work. Okay. So in the example of like data breaches, for example, like mishandling our data, and we have the right to amend false information, which I have asked them repeatedly to correct. If they don't do that, then I have the ability to then go to an ombudsman and complain about that. And also to the to REWA in our instance, which is the Real Estate Board of Western Australia, right? The Real Estate Industry Board, who handles licenses for real estate agents. They give fines and compliance, and then you can insist that they get more education. That will then proceed through the various processes, and eventually you could even go to court if you want. These things exist for you. If you want to make someone's life a bureaucratic nightmare, especially in this country, you just got to know how and just learn about what agency deals with which. So in Australia, we've got the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission, which deals with consumer protection. Then you've got the Office of E-Safety. You've got Office of the Australian Information Commissioner, which is for Privacy Act. Okay, you've got the Human Rights Commission, which deals with issues of discrimination, and this is just at the federal level. Okay, you've got ACMA, so if you're dealing with media or advertising or anything like that, you have the Australian Communications and Media Authority. All of those have complaints mechanisms that you can fill out a form, you can do a complaint, learn about what your complaint is, and go from there. Okay? You can just go from there and you can complain and you can get it up the chain, and that's how you make a difference. Sitting and shit posting on comments and on the internet and all of those sorts of things achieves nothing. Okay? It's mostly for losers who do nothing. And I want to present a hypothetical question. Are you a loser who does nothing, or are you someone who actually gives a shit about living and making a difference and contributing forward to society? And so, stop moaning about how everything is, it's not even, AI is really not that big of a threat. There's problems with its implementation, but I have a feeling that it's going to be self-correcting. I've been around long enough to know that these things have a tendency to self-correct, and there's a whole bunch. AI is like, remember 3 years ago, when everyone decided to have stories? LinkedIn had stories, remember that? And Twitter had fleets because everyone was in some weird space race to just implement a feature at the AI is the same at the moment. And when I say AI, I mean LLMs. Okay. And also I'd like to note that, I forgot to say actually at the beginning that with AI, like the government has actually deemed like large language models like ChatGPT to be fairly low risk and benign. Okay. So the experts who have actually sat down and assessed these things at a policy level, they're more focused on the real problems. Okay. Which is, like I said, the manipulative practices, dark patterns, that sort of stuff, election interference, of course, facial recognition software, privacy, surveillance, military technology, those sorts of things. They're more concerned with the abuse of that, okay? Also, but LLMs are so far down the bottom. But again, they've got an open committee at the moment, which is the copyright inquiry around that. So literally it is that committee is mandated to discuss the issue of copyright theft, okay, which is a big thing. But it doesn't mean that all AI is bad. Be specific, okay? Be specific. When you are talking about AI, what are you fucking talking about? And I would hazard a guess and say that the people that are talking about AI don't know what AI is. And most of the AI bros don't even fucking know what it is. They're too busy creating like women with big tits, like, and 5 boobs and fucking hentai bullshit. And they're like that weird autistic fucking thing that they call art. Okay. That's not AI either. That's just, it's a tool. Okay. Artificial intelligence, it sounds fancy, but it doesn't exist. It's not coming. It's not happening anytime soon. Okay. It has hit a ceiling and it will for some time. Chill. Now, the problem with AI is that humans put too much faith in AI. Okay. So it's not, the threat isn't the technology. The threat is idiots who misuse the technology, as it has happened with social. Okay. Idiots who abuse these platforms and abuse APIs. The reason we can't have an API anymore is because losers with fucking scripts it's why we can't have nice things, because of fuckwits, okay? It's not because of the technology. The idea of an open internet and open source and APIs and anonymity, great ideas in theory, until dipshits decide to hide behind anonymous accounts and flood people via the API with this information, okay? Fuckwits are the problem, not the technology. Because losers can't play nice. Because losers make everyone else suffer because they're a loser. So anyway, but from a policy point of view, right? Again, I've got these, obviously there's a lot of like real substantive concerns here, but you've got rights. You can do stuff. Okay. Now, again, I only know the the Western Australian legal framework. Okay, now there's gaps. There's always going to be gaps, right? Now, like EU actually do have an AI Act where you actually, and basically the GDPR, the DSA, and the AI Act are world leading. Okay, and de facto becomes the standard over time because tech companies are global, so eventually because it's more cost effective for them to just meet those standards, even though they will try to get around that shit as much as possible. Eventually, you just end up having to comply with the more prohibitive parts of the. So they're pushing things, they're pulling us all forward, which is great. But each country in the EU has its own complaints mechanism, specifically for the GDPR and AI and the DSA and those sorts of things. Now, you'd have to look that up yourself. I can't be across all of that, right, what the specifics are. But you've all got these frameworks, right? You've got consumer protection. You've got your equivalent of like an online safety stuff, right? You've got privacy legislation, like most places do, okay? You've got all these things, but you've also got industry-specific stuff like the boards, okay, like licensing. And, so a lot of people are putting stuff at the industry level. I'm trying to think of an example. I keep leaning on healthcare, but there's lots of, let's say you're a social worker, the social work board, okay, whatever they are, okay, the registration for like social workers, they'll have a policy, a governance policy around AI. They did it with social as well. They'll eventually tease it out and they'll start to build policies. Your university will have a policy. Your company will have a policy. Get involved with the policy. Create the policy if you can. Okay, be proactive. Like the key word with all of these things is active, not shit posting on Twitter. Like I've seen this there's this Twitter account, this Twitter lefty account. All he does is shit post. And it's just like, okay, fair enough. You do you, but like, I don't know what are you doing? You're not doing anything. You're not achieving anything. Wow, look at you go. But he often says things that are just untrue. And it's pointless. It's all pointless unless you're doing something. Write a letter to your MP talking about, again, not the threat of AI. What specifically have you been impacted by? I think you'd be surprised when you can be specific about what your problem is, that people can resolve it. Okay, it's not the fucking at the global level, the WEF is trying to get us to eat bugs. It's like, that's not fucking useful. No one gives a shit about that. But even talking about like big tech, I mean, like, break it down into little bits and go, okay, Mid-Journey. Okay, I have a specific complaint. You are using, you're training on my work, or you're training on copyrighted data. Now, what you do is you find other artists who are in the same boat and you organize with them, and you write up, and then you get together as a group. And you write to them and you go through their complaints as a group. Maybe form a union or something. Okay, maybe unionize or organize. If you're an agency, what you can do is actually, you can actually do a lot there, because if you are somebody who is paying a lot of licensing fees, let's use the Figma or Adobe. Like the Adobe campaign is actually a good example of that. Where if you're spending a lot of money and you're spending, per seat, and you've got 1,000 subscriptions, you have an account manager at Adobe, you call them and you say, I am thinking of cancelling my subscriptions. Okay? Not just, they won't let us opt out and just complaining about it on Twitter. Why don't you call your account manager and say, I object. Stop this. I will sue you, and be willing to follow through on it. I think you'd be surprised what you can achieve when you actually are prepared to follow through on something and do it. Okay, you'd be amazed what you can do when you actually just get specific, know what your cause is, keep it simple, go to the right channels, go through the right procedure, and get a decision made, which I think you'd be amazed how easy it is. Okay? Annoying, time consuming, requires you to look stuff up once in a while, but it is effective. It's way more effective than sitting around moaning on Twitter and LinkedIn, all those things about AI. Okay? Right. I'm so done arguing with idiots. Like, what's the point? Why are you arguing with idiots all day, every day? And most of them are fucking bots anyway. Stop arguing with idiots. Okay? In the time that you spend arguing with idiots online, you could be looking stuff up, you could be reading stuff, you could be figuring out, you could just go through an exercise of figuring out what your grievance is. Okay, is it just a fear-based response because you've seen on the news that AI's come into? It's like, that's not useful. It's not true either, but it's not useful. Definitely not useful. But you know what specifically, right? You have, like, they've got all of these things, which is literally so much is going on. There has never been a better time or a better opportunity to have your say in policy around AI. Now, I was around when social media hit, and I was part of I helped people write a lot of their social media policies. Quite a few organisations who hired me and engaged me as a consultant to write their social media policies. Okay, so this is something that I know how to do pretty well. I admit that that's a skill set that not a lot of people have, but if you just learn your rights. Or ring them up and say, what am I've got a complaint. You don't even need to know the legal stuff. Just know what agency is in charge of your complaint. Write in the box. Type in the box to write a complaint at the Information Commissioner. They collect all of those. And if there's enough of those, they will actually go ahead and take action. Okay, they will also give you an answer. They will help you through. They will ask you, you'll get a phone call from someone there if, that wants to know what, will extract the information from you. If you don't know exactly what the nature of your complaint is, you just need to be able to point and grunt roughly at the agency and they'll do the rest. Just do something. Okay, but you can, if you're in an agency, you can contest it. But also you could organise with every other agency if you were done undercutting everyone and lying and, deceiving everybody. If you get over that for 2 seconds, you could, organise and say, like, as an industry, enough with these unethical practices. Okay, we have all of these guidelines. Australia is a signatory to the AI ethics principles, the OECD AI ethics principles. We're a signatory to that. It is basically effectively guiding our legislation, because when we sign something here, it effectively de facto becomes the spirit of the law here, because that is something that is unique to Australia. But agencies can turn around and go, well, enough. Regulate dodgy agencies, regulate dark patterns, make it, or work together to shame those that do the wrong thing. Because every agency is so atomized that, and also don't have the incentive to do the right thing. Every incentive exists for them to do the wrong thing, an unethical thing. But again, if you actually gave a shit about this stuff, you could, use your clout with either the tech companies because you're spending money with them as a customer. You could use I've been able to talk to Adobe, and I'm not a big person. I'm not hundreds of seats person. I've still been able to have a conversation with them about their products over the years, right? You're surprisingly approachable, okay? I don't know whether that's the case now, but they're surprisingly approachable and always have been. I've always had a good impression of Adobe up until recently, and I feel like they've lost their way a bit. But again, it's not. It's not absolutes. It's not like Adobe is all evil all of the time. It's like that's a toddler's view of the world. They're not. They've provided a product that is of tremendous value. They are a market leader for a reason. And the suite, again, yes, because they've gobbled up a number of companies, but at the core of their product is something, this Photoshop and Illustrator and those things. Now, InDesign was Quark Express, and they acquired that, and they acquired Macromedia and all those sorts of things. Yes, a big part of it was through acquisitions. But at the same time, Adobe, over the years, have provided tremendous amounts of value with their Creative Cloud subscription, whether you like it or not, okay? It's fucking half. If you're charging even low rates, it's an hour's work, okay? A month. Like, Jesus Christ, calm down. So anyway, for like all of that software. So anyway, but again, you can have issues with their training. You can have issues with the dark patterns in their subscriptions. You can have specific issues without writing them all off as 100% evil 100% of the time. It's the same thing with Facebook, okay, and Meta. Okay, these things exist because they provide some sort of value for people, all right? There's some good things, and they've got other problems. They're not all evil, okay? Now, what they need to do is be regulated. They need to be regulated by governments. You need to set the law. Okay, they're going to push. They're going to only do what they're required to do or forced to do by the government. That's what corporations do. They wriggle. Okay, that is the job of the corporate lawyer, is to wriggle. And the corporate accountant is to wriggle. That's why a lot of lawyers and accountants don't want those jobs, because they're unethical jobs, okay? That's why there's corporate lawyers and, there's lawyers and accountants that work at government and do the same thing to stop the wriggling. That's how it works. So what do? As a citizen, make a complaint. Most governments, okay? So again, think about the police. The police cannot just go arresting people unless someone has made a complaint. It's the same thing with all of these other things. You can't just say, well, that's against the consumer. And it's like, well, if you're their customer, complain then. If you're a citizen, complain then. Use it. Don't just sit on Twitter talking about how it's illegal. Okay? Complain. I think you'd be surprised, because so few people actually can be asked doing anything. You find that you get cut through. If you just show up to a meeting or write an email or write a complaint, like I did this, I went through this with the university with AI a couple of times now, where I actually make a point of objecting. And they've answered me in good faith, because I go, no, but no one's doing it. They just accept, you stand out, because so few people will actually do anything. Anyway, I've probably rambled a bit here, but that's okay. But this is the thing about AI, which is that it's become too big. It's become way too big, and it's not even AI. Usually you're talking about large language models, which have been considered to be somewhat low risk in the grand scheme of things. And then you've obviously got, you need to differentiate between those, okay? So making sure that, are you objecting to a decision, like an algorithmic decision? So here's another example. We've got laws here where with recruitment, in order to, that employees have the right to challenge automated decisions when it comes to employment. You didn't know that, did you? The FTC in America have actually ruled that recently as well, that these things, there's laws around these things. You can't just decide and screen candidates out and hide behind the algorithm. There has to be an opportunity for human review of all of this. Like, that is law now, okay? There's all of these things, right? And you just need to look it up and go, okay, what are my rights with regards to this? What is the appeals process? And a lot of this stuff is just, it's built over time, brick by brick, complaint by complaint, case by case, law by law, okay? Laws are only as good as enforcement. And so you need an act, okay? So you need to write to your politician to get the bill so that there's an act of parliament. Once there's an act of parliament, the agency is given the power to enforce that legislation, okay? Then through that, you have various, you also have the tribunals and ombudsman and various other things like that, where you have the right to appeal decisions at all levels of government. You have every right and every opportunity available to you. Also, when legislation is being drafted, you have the opportunity to write a submission as a member of the public, okay? Right now, like I said, there's a copyright and AI reference group, Okay? Open now. Privacy Act review, open now. Online Safety Act, open now. Look them up. Write something. Doesn't have to be great. Okay? It's on the public record that you wrote something. It's right there. Okay? Right. Do something. It has to be considered by the committee. That's their job. They're mandated to do that. Or you can just sit around making dumb shit, saying the same shit over and over again for 5 years online to idiots. Okay? And it's like, well, I'll do that if those idiots are paying me, but I'm not doing it for free. So why would you just sit there living in a bubble, whinging nonstop? Right? Like, fucking do something. You know, at least, you know, like, again, I'm on video and I'm whinging here, but I actually follow it up and back it up with actual action. And, you know, like, that's just, it's so fucking frustrating. Like, it's not activism to fucking tweet. Seriously. Fuck's sake. I'm in the persuasion business. Yeah, okay. Who have you persuaded in the last 10 years while you said the same shit to idiots? Whose mind have you changed? Give me a list. I can guarantee you it's probably 5 people in 10 years and it's gone nowhere. Would I be correct? But you have probably maybe made some money from Patreon. Let's put it that way. Join the fight. Join the fight. The fight that I never actually follow through on in any way. It's like, fucking hell. You can do freedom of information requests. As a citizen, any government department, you have the ability to request information about how they're implementing things and the decision-making process and the data. Okay? You have the right to ask for these things. I do that sometimes for fun. It's great. I did that with the ABC. It's good fun. Okay? Use what's available to you. You can only be handed so much. It's like, this is like, horses can only be led to water. You know, like, fucking drink. Jesus Christ. It's like, oh, anyway. Anyway, that's me. I'm going to go. It's been an hour. I'm off. Thanks for watching. I'll be back soon. I'm just in the middle of a lot of stuff. But like I said, I'm doing other things. I don't consider this to be terribly persuasive or influential in any way, and I'd rather put my time and energy into things that actually do something. And yeah, and you know, I'm reducing my time on social media in general, and you know, obviously I have to promote various things, but I'll come on here to talk, but I don't think that this is at all productive, especially given that, like, it's mostly AstroTurf now anyway. It's bots, it's fucking pseudonyms, it's losers with nothing better to do. Anyone who's actually doing it, you may know, again, like I'm going to say, this world moves on. There are rules, there are laws, there are departments dedicated to these things. You have agency, you can do stuff. Sitting and moaning on Twitter is pointless. Okay? You don't do anything. Okay? Now, again, I'd like a list of whose mind you've changed. Yeah. I used to cope with that one too before the change of ownership, and I thought, well, okay, he might change. But no. Now it's just idiots yelling at idiots, being idiots, and saying stupid things. What is the point? Get a life. Do something else. Do something productive with your time. I love you. Thank you for your precious life seconds. I'll be back soon. I don't know when, but it'll be soon. Okay. Bye.